Hi, folks. Come on in, sit down. Please have a seat. And welcome to our salon on the 18th of July. 4 o'clock salon with Philip Brunelle. We're going to be talking about improvising to visual media, and specifically silent films we're going to be looking at. And Philip, I'll introduce in just a moment, but I would like to let you know right now, if you want to ask a question and you're online, you should wave your hands that you want to be recognized so I can see you. And that we're recording already, but I just want to set up the protocol for how we're doing this. I've got a gallery setting. So I can see who's on the screen. If you are not being heard, please put something in chat and we will make sure that you have a chance to be heard. I'm the host for this event, and as such, I am given the honor to introduce our guest artist. We are always lucky when someone comes in and helps show us the best way to do things as a professional. And we're going to be seeing the video of the film up here, and you should be able to see it on your screen as well. To show you how, it would show you how to improvise to visual media. I could not think of anyone better than Philip Brunelle. Now, Philip is a longtime colleague and incredible advocate for my stuff. And so I've been very happy whenever I had a chance to work with him. He works as one of the best advocates for new music around. He's recognized worldwide, and certainly in Minnesota. He was one of the founding members of the Minnesota Opera. He's been on nearly every arts board in the Twin Cities, but he has, over the last few years, started a group, a series at his church, Plymouth Music Series. Long time ago, what year was that? 1970? 69. And your first composer was Aaron Copeland. Mm-hmm. And Aaron came, Copeland, yeah. How are you going to get people? You got to call him up. And the theme, I've learned from the best. He said, just call anybody you want to talk to and then see what happens. I called him. He said, yes, I could come do that. So we're happy that he's here today. And Plymouth Music Series started in 69. It grew and it continued to commission and do premieres and did unusual repertoire for chorus and orchestra, and grew out of a church basement, and now is a multi-million-dollar nonprofit organization. And it's been a real joy to watch this transform into something that is going to be a legacy that's going to last for decades, if not forever. So happy that Philip is joining us. I don't want to take too much time. I want to get to the music as soon as possible. And I've asked him to do two things. We're going to improvise to two different films, and we're going to talk a little bit about his strategy, how he puts together music, and then we're going to watch a film. Then he's going to explain a little bit about what he's thinking about, and then we're going to play the same film again. He's going to improvise to that. And then we're going to listen to a second film, a much shorter film. This first film is by Georges Méliès, and it's from the early 20th century. It's considered by many scholars to be the first full-length narrative film, and it's very fantastical. And there is a movie made about this movie. This movie was moving. That was, first of all, one of the great things. The movie about the movie was written by Martin Scorsese. It's called Hugo, and it's about how three-dimensional film is going to become. So Hugo is a very pivotal figure, a piece of work that is talking about how film transforms our reality. And so without much ado, did I give you much ado, or just a little ado? Without further ado, please welcome Philip Brunelle.
So music has been what my life has been about music has been what my life's been about since, well, let's see.
Here we go.
There we go. I started piano at 4 and I never stopped. I was a boy soprano, sang all over the place. When I went to the university, I was 18, and I was going to be a organ, piano, and percussion major. As it turned out, I dropped the organ only because the teacher I wanted to take from had retired from the U and they weren't going to allow him to be my teacher. So I said, forget it. So I just stayed with him privately and then did the other. So then when I was 19, I was the youngest member ever of the Minnesota Orchestra and was percussion and piano and organ. And I did that for 5 years. And then the last year I was there, I got this grant to go and study at the Metropolitan Opera. And I did that and I came back and then Minnesota Opera hired me. At the same time, I'd always been a church organist since I was 15. So I'd always done that. And so then I went to the church I'm still at, Plymouth. And so this now in September, I will start my 54th year there. You know, well, you got to keep going. I mean, why not? I've never been sick, never missed a thing. So, you know, you just do it. And so when I started what was called Plymouth Music Series, and then we changed the name to Vocal Essence. But the first years we did. But as Randall said, my theme always was, if you don't ask, you won't know. So that was why I picked up the phone and called Aaron Copeland. And I said, hi, Mr. Copeland, I'm starting a music series and I would like to feature you conducting. And then he said, young man, no one has ever asked me to do that. And I said, yes, I know. He said, tell me the date. I will cancel what I'm doing and be there. I went, okay, thank you. It was the same thing when I called James Earl Jones because I needed a narrator. And hello, and I went, oh, hi there. So anyway, so James Earl Jones came and a number of other people.
Mrs.
So
Sadat. Mrs. Sadat.
Well, yeah, we wanted to do a piece once. Libby Larson, the composer, we wanted to do a piece and we couldn't think of who would have the text. And I said, it should be something different. And then I said, why don't we go to Cairo, Egypt and meet Jahan Sadat and talk to her? So we did. And well, Libby, of course, at first when I said we're going to go to Cairo, thought we were going to Cairo, Illinois. But no, I said no, Cairo, Egypt. So we did. So we've had a number of wonderful experiences. And I started right away commissioning some pieces short, some long. So we've now commissioned, I think we're at 350 pieces now that we've done. And so we'll do more. So the big deal today is silent movies. So here's how I got into that. I was conducting the Guthrie Theater downtown Minneapolis used to have another home before its present home. And it was right adjacent to the Walker Arts Center. And there was a big Guthrie thrust stage and all that. So we did our productions there when I was with the opera. So I was conducting La Boheme, and it was the final dress rehearsal. So I finished the rehearsal at like 4 o'clock, and this man from the Walker Arts Center, and they had an auditorium. It was an auditorium, probably 300 seats.
1050.
Yeah, and it just went straight up. I mean, it was one of those kinds of spaces. And he was waiting off stage when I finished. He said, say, what are you doing tonight? And I said, well, actually, I thought of coming over to the Walker because you're going to do this film called Napoleon. And I've always heard about it. And I know that the man who is going to be the pianist for it is an amazing improviser. And, well, thanks, Mike. And so I said, I wanted to see it. They said, well, here's the problem. The man who is going to perform for it is got 102 temperature, so he can't do it. And we said, who can we ask? And they said, Philip Brunelle. And I said, I've never done a silent movie. Oh, okay. So I said, so it was 4 o'clock. I said, well, let me just see the movie and then I can see it and then I'll watch. He said, that problem is the movie's 5 hours. Oh, Okay, I guess I won't be seeing it because the
4 o'clock?
performance starts at 7. So I said, well, can you give me just a synopsis or something so I know something to go on? This is a movie that was made in what, 1920?
1920.
Something like
20s,
that.
Yeah.
It was a
22.
classic movie.
Abel Gance.
Yeah.
Abel Gance.
And
is right.
so if you can imagine, the screen in the theater would have been much higher and as wide as the walls here. And so I'm sitting on stage like this, and this screen is like, so you had to kind of just play leaning back to see the thing, you know. So this 5-hour film, and so I did that. And I said, I can't do it tomorrow night. I'm conducting La Boheme. They said, no, we're taping you, and then we'll just play you tomorrow night. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I did it. I learned early on when I said, who's the composer? Because part of this whole thing is figuring out a style of what the music's going to be. And I said, who did the original score, which is lost? And they said, Honegger. I said, okay, I know that style. Okay. I can do that. So I can still remember the first scene started with a storm scene with Napoleon on this boat. And I thought, oh, here we go. And I start going. And then all of a sudden I realized 5 hours. This is going to be a long storm. And I was really whooping up this storm. I suddenly brought the storm back and it was a 30-minute storm, you know, by the time you do that. So everything, long dimensions. And the biggest surprise, which is why this film became famous, is it was a black and white film until the last, I'm going to say, 5 minutes of the film. And so the screen would have been not to the wall at the beginning. It was tall, but to the wall. And all of a sudden, in the last 5 minutes, and the audience just gasped, the screen suddenly went wide in color. First color film. And I can still remember just people, I mean, it was really, well, you've been watching 5 hours of black and white, and suddenly the last 5 minutes is color and everything like that. So it was really an amazing experience. After the film was over, you know, everybody's clapping and yay, you know, thank you, Philip, and all that. I then was standing there, and this guy came up to me and said, how'd you do that? And I said, you know, I don't know. I just improvised, and I had to go because I hadn't even seen the film. I said, okay. He said, well, I'm just wondering because I have to do this film at Radio City Music Hall. It was Francis Ford Coppola, who was in the audience. And I went, oh, okay, fine. You know, I really didn't know who he was. So it's okay. And so, you know, so this thing goes on. And so after that, Walker calls me and said, we'd like to have you come and do some short films, like 1 hour films, you know. And I said, yeah, and do like all of the films of Buster Keaton and Laurel and Hardy and all these kinds of people. And I said, sure. So over maybe the next 5 years, every summer, I would do a whole series of these. And my admiration for silent movie actors on the screen is huge, as would be yours, because there was no second take. Everything got done once. And they had a number of people die in doing silent movies because an accident happened. There was no second take. I can still remember we did a Buster Keaton one. And so here's a big house. Buster Keaton is standing here and the house collapses. And except for the window, there was a window in the house. Buster Keaton had figured out when this thing falls, I have to be where the window is going to come and be right here. And knowing that as it fell, it moved a little bit. I mean, how people knew all that kind of stuff. And the same thing, being on a boat and the the turntables going around there,
yeah.
and you had to figure out, because you're tied to it, so you're underwater for 2/3 of it, coming up. And how do you figure
battle
you're
boat.
breathing? And anyway, a million to see these things is. So all I'm saying is, the next time you see a silent movie, just think it's a one time. Everything got done once. And so the other thing I would say about doing all those, and I would say about this, is knowing the era that the music, that the film came from, has always to some degree influenced what I do. Now, it doesn't have to be. You could do something totally, atonal, and it's perfectly fine. But I found doing all those Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd and all of that stuff. There's a Harold Lloyd one when he is
Hanging on the clock.
he's hanging on a clock that goes around, and you go, no, it's and he's 100 feet above the ground, and you're just going, no, it's not possible. I mean, you have to see these things to really say, wow, there was a different era. It didn't happen when we get to the modern age. Let's do this thing for the 10,000th time to get it right, So anyway, I've tried oftentimes to have a mood when I'm writing. So if you have a short movie, it's different than a longer one. So what we're going to see now, and I just thought this is the way I've done it. We're going to do, this movie's about 15 minutes.
Yep.
And what I'd like to do is have you just watch it in silence. I have brought my piece of paper because I need to write down a few little key things. I need to write down, all of a sudden, it's like you're watching it and suddenly somewhere this isn't going to happen, but somebody all of a sudden takes a bat and goes bap on the head to somebody. Well, I got to capture that shtick when it happens, or whatever. So I've got my paper here to write down a few things that I'll do. And then after I've done it, if you've got questions, great. And then we'll just do it again and I'll improvise.
Well, I would like to, after you've written down your notes, I'd like to hear your notes.
Oh, sure.
So that we have an idea of what you're using. And are you playing in a key? Do you pick, say, okay, we're going to do this in the key of G? Or how do you decide how to get started?
Well, the key I might play in, let's face it, if it's gloomy, I'm going to start minor.
Yeah.
F minor is good for gloom, I've found, A minor a bit. No, I might change keys in the middle. I won't stay in one key for that whole time.
And being a church organist, you learn how to improvise and in a service.
Yep.
That's just a normal practice. That's
Yep.
how you would do this.
And one of the other great advantages of what I've done is I know a zillion styles. So if you said to me, okay, play Mussorgsky. Oh, okay, here we go. Play Gershwin. Oh, okay. Play Bach. Okay, it's a great help, believe me, when you suddenly have to figure out what style do I want this to be in now, when you know what these styles are.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So the other thing I would just say is, over the time of the pandemic, I kept thinking, boy, lots of people are holed up and they don't, they're not getting out. What can I do? So I decided to do a 10-minute little presentation. My son, Tim, was my videographer. I sat at the piano, and each day I took a composer who had been heard in a vocal lessons concert at some point. So I thought, because then it was personal. It wasn't some name out of the blue. And so I did each day 10 minutes, and I would talk, it was all about choral music. I would play just a few excerpts about them. I would talk about the person a bit. And if I had personal experiences with them, like when the French composer Messiaen came to town, and he and I had dinner together. So when you're having dinner with Messiaen, he wants to know about what are the Minnesota birds, right? Because so then he's going, Philippe, connaissez-vous les oiseaux de Minnesota? And I said, the loon. And he's going, and then he first asked, what is, this is all in French. Then he said, what's the Latin? And I said, gavide immer. Okay, and what is the sound of the bird? I'm going, ooh, ooh. You know, my wife's there going, that's not the way it works. You know, right? So, but I used all of that for my 10 minutes about Messiaen. And it just was, because one of my goals is I just want people to know that composers are human and that they're just, oh, how interesting that this person. So every day was about a different composer. So I did 300 of them. And easy. They're all available on Vocal Essence. If you just go to musical moments, they're there.
We will share that on our website.
And they're all according to, I not only do they have their name, but I put, you know, one category, then after I was done, which country they came from, men, women, whatever. So they're all it's all categories. It's easy to find it.
Yeah, it is. We'll share it.
So anyway, so here we go.
Okay, so we should hit the lights. Is that what we're gonna do? Yeah.
It's too dark and stable.
I think I better turn around.
Yeah.
Gotta watch. No, it's fine.
You think it's work?
This is from 1902. Georges Méliès, Le Voyage dans la Lune, Trip to the Moon.
Oh, is that
Oh, is that right?
okay. Here we go.
I realized when people saw this, there would have been music happening. Later in silent movies, they added words sometimes underneath, but not at the beginning.
The making of this particular movie is featured in the movie Hugo. This movie was made 120 years ago. Yep.
You realize this is the same time as the Wright brothers were getting in an airplane at Kitty Hawk.
Yeah.
This is like way before Lindbergh.
Yeah. No one noticed. No. It's not waiting.
And there's
Famous moment in the film. Big Dipper. Ooh. Yeah. An illusionist. That's snow?
moon dust.
Moon dust. Sure. Ooh. Ooh. Ooh.
Yeah, this is a great moment.
Did you turn on the lights again? Okay. Wow, that's fantastical. And there's, when you called shtick, what does that mean to you?
Shtick would be, like, when they, when those people went poof.
They poofed
Yeah,
up.
right, yeah, yeah, that,
That's like something, some action happens,
Yeah.
and you want to do something musically that takes advantage of that.
Yeah. I would say when you're writing down, watching one of these, what I learned over the years of doing was writing less was better than writing more, because you started to write too much. And then you were like, well, you couldn't change the moods that fast. So I've probably written more than I would have normally here in my little sheet.
Mhm.
So
Did you go through them?
sure. So what I ended up saying was, and this is just my shorthand. This first one says procession number 1. That means we had a procession and then there was the big cheese came out.
Right.
So I know that I'll have something a little more for number 1. Then the second I wrote rocket, who goes? Then I did change clothes, and leave. Then I put rocket itself pounding, because they were creating the rocket. Boom, still those guys doing all that, you know. Then marching on board, trumpets, I'll do that. And then
That's shtick.
that's shtick. Oh
Okay.
yeah, and then boom, when it took off. Then landing on the moon, then you could see the earth, then sleeping stars. Don't forget, this is also at the time, so you'll hear it. This is also the time that Debussy was alive and well. So you will hear music of that era. You won't necessarily hear, you won't necessarily hear Claire de Lune, but you will hear, but you might, it is Lune.
It is Lune.
Yeah, I should. Okay, I will. I'll use that somehow. Okay, then they wake up, they're wandering, and I just put creatures because there's that whole scene about, zapping people and all of that. Then I put the moon court,
Right.
smashing God, the head moon guy, the fight, and then down to earth.
And you think they came down to earth, the ocean, the
Yeah.
end of the ocean.
Yeah. So that's what I've got to go.
Okay, so how many points in that film? Do you think a dozen or so?
Yeah, something like that.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Okay, so what?
So the point is, you don't want to change every 10 seconds, folks. You'll be like, forget it, right? You can't do it. So if, depending on what it is, but I'd say, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I got 10. So, it might be one change every minute and a half or something I would do. I can't say till I do
So
it.
you do it.
Yeah.
Has anyone here done improvisation to film before? No? Casey, could you go on your microphone, please? Turn on, unmute.
Yeah. Thanks for my- Is it on?
Mine is on.
Just my sound.
There,
So-
there you
So, yes, we've done some Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin films with jazz ensembles, jazz combos. And watching the film live with an audience in this room, actually on the screen. And improvising, and we do 2 or 3 takes to kind of see which ones work best. I actually filmed it all too. I have it on. But I as a drummer, I would do drum set. So there's a lot more opportunity there to have different timbres than maybe some of the other instruments. And it's really fun. And you just every time you get a second chance, you're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna hit that one this time that I missed, because so it's a really fun experience.
Yeah, the Buster Keatons give you a lot more shtick moments.
Yeah.
This was more of a panorama piece, so that wasn't really that. But when you think that this is 1902, good grief. I mean, folks. So I have one little story, and that is the University of Minnesota has a wonderful music building called Ferguson Hall. And Ferguson Hall was named for a man named Donald Ferguson. Donald Ferguson went to the university, graduated in 1902.
Really?
In 1902,
Okay.
went to England and studied after that. I didn't meet him till he was about 96. I went to his house and we talked, and then I was then, of course, at the opera, and I said, I'd love to have the opera studio, which we had at the time, meet you and hear some of the stories about what it was like, your favorite conductors when you were in London in those years, the early years. His favorite was Gustav Mahler. He liked his conducting. And I said, oh, okay, that'd be a while ago. And and then he went and talked. So I brought these kids over to the house, and Donald is there. By this time, he's like 98, sharp as a tack. And I said, so Donald, and he starts talking about all these old names from, like 1905, and they're all like, nothing is registering. And I thought, okay. So I said, Donald, thought about Lindbergh. You remember that first flight. And I remember he looked at the group and said, the town stopped. And I said, well, it must have the idea of Lindbergh landing in Paris. And he went, Lindbergh, I'm talking about the Wright brothers. He said, that's when the town stopped. I'm thinking, the Wright brothers. Okay, 19, what was that, 11
go.
or
Yeah, something like
12?
that, yes.
Good. He said, that's, and the thought that this man was alive, they couldn't name the building after him because he wouldn't die. And the university had a policy, no building named for someone living. That was it. And they finally made an exception for him. And so we have Ferguson Hall, and my favorite thing, he was 102, and he came and turned over the first spade of earth for Ferguson Hall. I went, yes. Yeah, he died the next year. Yeah. So that was Donald. So anyway, all right.
All right. So does anyone have any questions? Let's go.
We're right.
Yeah, I think we're about to be right.
All right, hang on. Put up my music.
Now is it all right if we turn the lights down low, or is it okay?
Yeah, fine. As long as I can just see what I've written here a bit.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Maybe, yeah.
Now let's do this. I've got an idea.
But I'm all right.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I just pulled it. All right, so, I'm all right.
You all right?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Let's go. So if I did it again, it'd be totally different. You know, I
But
mean,
you
I
would-
might have a little bit of.
What about
shtick.
Claire de Lune? You'd still have Claire de Lune.
Oh,
yeah.
I put a little
Okay.
Claire in there. You know, you always found two. There was one Buster Keaton, I remember, they were on this icy cliff and climbing all over, and all of a sudden it just dawned on me, the perfect thing, not all of you will know this, but a perfect thing was, yeah, climb every mountain, and because that's what they were doing, you know. And of course, the audience all roared,
Yeah.
you know, because they caught it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So anyway. No.
Bravo, bravo.
Well, as I say, you know, I'm glad to have questions, but I also would just tell you, if I did it again, it'd be different, you know, except for Claire de Lune. I bring that in. Yeah, yeah.
I like,
Could you, yeah, you can speak a little loud.
I like the America.
Well, I had to put just something when the
When you said
Earth
Earth.
showed, when we saw the Earth, I just had to have a little moment. But you deal with all these little funny things is never too long. Just start them and then move on. As opposed to like the entire America the Beautiful. No, that's too much of a good thing. That's not a joke. That's not, you know, so you just want to start it, do it for a while and move on.
Okay.
Enough to capture that little moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Any thoughts?
Yeah.
Marcia?
The La Marseillaise, of course you have to do, you know. Yeah, I had to put that in earlier and at the end, because it's a French
Yes,
film, you know,
exactly.
right? So that's why you do that.
French astronauts. I would like to have you do one more project. I want a little bit of short film. I'm wondering if you'd be willing to look at it and then improvise right away.
Sure.
You will be?
Of course.
Okay.
This is 4 minute and 4.5 minute little clip.
Of what?
It's called Easy Street by Charlie Chaplin.
Okay.
And it's a 4 minute little scene. It's very comedic, very slapstick, very vaudevillian.
And Casey, what time period was this? 1920s? Okay, 1917.
Yeah. Okay.
My mother-in-law was about 3 years old when this was made.
My
She-
mother was born in 1916, so yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
about that
so-
time.
Yeah, about
Okay.
that time.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's watch the film.
All right. So we'll see it twice, right?
Yes, we
Yeah.
will.
I mean, I have to tell you, I have to tell you all, Randall said at the beginning, oh, well, you just do it straight off. I said, you can't do that. Gotta see it. So you know what you have to try to do. You can't just do it cold. I mean, you could, but I would have missed things that, you know, I
Good.
wouldn't have known. So
This
here
is
it
4
goes.
minutes.
All right. So before we do, let me talk a little bit about it. So
Thank you.
doing something like this, comedy is totally different than the moon picture.
Okay.
It's gonna be what I'm gonna call through composed. In other words, I can't every little moment of, oh, this, oh, that. I mean, it would just be too frenetic. It doesn't gonna work. So what you have to do is give yourself a little background, something that you can go with. And then, I've never seen this before, but when you get near the end, and then there's the fight with the police, with Charlie Chaplin and the guy, then you can kind of move it into something more dramatic to make it work. But you don't want to try to do every little bit of shtick, not in Charlie Chaplin stuff. You have to just, again, it's the bigger picture. So, whether I would start out with, I mean, whether it was something like that or. I mean, whatever, but the point is, it's a little motif and you stay there because, well, you can't, so, and then, so those little moments of fights in between, just keep going, don't try to make sure every time the fight comes, but just save something for later when when he gets bopped and, and they do all of that.
The shtick.
The shtick, you got it, okay. Let's do it. Do you all know a song called Nola?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, Nola was a very popular song at that time. And that kind of song.
Yes.
So, but it wouldn't be that song, but it would be that kind of style that would be very popular when this film was made. So I'll use something in that vein.
All right, you let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready. So. It's weird.
That is weird.
Yeah. Well, and it's also part of a longer film.
Yeah, it is.
So if you saw the whole film,
You know how this turned out?
no.
Yeah, no, but if you saw the whole
If you,
film.
then I would be doing something different,
Right,
you
right.
know, right? And what you try to do also, if you can, if you had a longer one, is to create a melody that you could use throughout
Mhm.
and maybe do it in different keys and do
Different
stuff
style,
with it,
different company.
you know, when you have time to do something. Yeah. Well, you just can't. Give it a motif, you know, and you just kind of go from there, because otherwise, I mean, it's like you'd have to have a new theme every 10 seconds, you know? I would know. That would
So
work.
the challenge for all of the composers here is to try to think in musical terms. And we're talking about visual media that's changing very, very quickly. And so looking at it repeatedly, you only had it one time. to
Yeah.
see it. That was a brilliant thing to see what you were able to do with one viewing. Our composers are going to see the same film 20 times, 10 times. And you're suggesting that a single theme with different treatments all the way through might be one of the strategies.
Well, how long is the film gonna be?
Well, it's everybody gets to choose their own film. Does anybody have a film they've already picked out? Yeah, Charlie, could you do you please?
How long is it?
5 minutes?
Okay. Well, I would just say,
Okay.
if you have a film, they're not gonna be longer than that,
No,
probably.
no.
No. So if it's 4 or 5 minutes, boy, I'd watch it like 3 times before I did anything.
Hmm.
I would not write anything. I would just see it. And then you see it a second time and you go, oh, you know, maybe I could change this, and then a third, and then start to figure out what you want to do. But you need to get a feeling of the sweep of what it is. So there's some kind of thematic moment before it. you
So
know?
we shouldn't look at you and say, oh, well, he was able to make this. I don't have to. I can look at it one time and then come up with some music.
I'm older than they are. You know, what's your question?
It's something that already has music. Would you listen to it with music or without?
Without,
Okay.
I would never listen with music. Because, well, I shouldn't say never. I mean, you could, I guess, but if you want it to be yours, then I wouldn't, you know, I would just watch it and see for yourself. And, you know, I could easily have done, not with the second one, but with the moon thing, I could have done something, that was totally different and never relate to that time of music, you know, impressionism style. I could have gone somewhere totally else, and that'd be okay too.
Yeah.
It'd be all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Anyone?
I
Anyone
look
more?
forward to hearing from Randall what you all come up with.
We'll show them to you. We'll send you the links and you'll be able to see them yourself.
I'd like to.
I really would like you to at least have a look at these things.
I'd be glad to.
That'd be fantastic.
Absolutely. No.
Give a round of applause to Philip as I said. You know? There. Thank you. All right, folks, thank you very much. This is ending our Zoom session on improvising for visual media. Thank you so much for coming by today.